The screen's bluish glow was the only light illuminating Elara's face in the darkness of her one-bedroom apartment. It was a face she often felt was a study in mediocrity, wide-set hazel eyes that held too much hesitation, a nose that was a little too small for her face, and a cascade of mousy brown hair that refused to hold a curl. At 28, she had built a comfortable, quiet life for herself as a freelance graphic designer, a life that existed primarily within these four walls and the boundless expanse of the internet. Her current reality, however, was fixated on the building across the manicured courtyard. Apartment 3B, the home of Ben Carter. Ben was, in a word, sunlight. He had the kind of effortless charm that seemed to radiate from him, a warmth that made you want to bask in his presence. His hair was the color of wheat in late summer, and he had a laugh that Elara could hear sometimes, floating up from the courtyard, a sound that never failed to make her heart perform a clumsy, painful somersault. In the 3 months since he'd moved in, their interactions had been a masterclass in awkwardness. There was the time in the mailroom where she'd fumbled her package and he'd gracefully caught it, his fingers brushing against hers for a fraction of a second. "Thanks," she'd squeaked, her voice an octave too high. "Anytime, neighbor," he'd replied, his smile a flash of perfect white teeth that left her momentarily blind. Then there was the encounter in the elevator, a full 3 minutes of stifling silence where she'd stared at the descending numbers as if her life depended on them, muttering a strangled, "Have a good one," before fleeing as the doors slid open. He was a living, breathing romance novel hero, and she was the unnamed background character who occasionally tripped over loose cobblestone. Frustration curdled in her stomach. It was this feeling that led her fingers to dance across the keyboard, not to her work dashboard, but to a new, blank profile on a popular social media site. It was a foolish, middle-of-the-night impulse, born from a potent cocktail of loneliness and cheap Merlot. What would it be like to talk to him without her tongue tying itself into knots? What would a version of Elara sound like if she was unburdened by social anxiety? A version who didn't overthink every word, who could volley a witty remark without breaking into a cold sweat. Her cursor blinked in the name field. She thought of the constellation her mother had always pointed out on clear nights. Lyra. It sounded strong, melodic, confident. She typed, "Lyra Evans." Next, the profile picture. She scrolled through her hidden folder, the one labeled for Mom, containing the rare photos where she looked passable. She found one from a friend's wedding 6 months ago. Her hair was styled by a professional, her makeup expertly applied, and she was caught in a moment of genuine, unforced laughter. It didn't even look like her. It looked like her more successful, more interesting twin. She uploaded it. The bio was next. Her own was a self-deprecating joke about caffeine and vector art. Lyra's needed to be different. She typed, "Art director, amateur stargazer, and believer in the perfect cup of coffee. Currently seeking my next great adventure." It was a lie, but a beautiful, polished one. It felt like putting on a suit of armor. Then came the dangerous part. The search. Her fingers trembled as she typed his name.
Ben Carter.
And there he was. His profile was a curated collection of travel photos, hiking a mountain in Patagonia, laughing on a beach in Thailand, holding a tiny, ridiculously cute puppy. He looked even more dashing in pixels than he did in person. Her mouse hovered over the Add Friend button for a full minute, her pulse a frantic drumbeat in her ears. This was insane. Catfishing her own neighbor. It was a special brand of pathetic. But then she remembered the warmth of his smile in the mailroom, a warmth never directed at the real, stumbling Elara. She clicked Add Friend. She minimized the window, a hot flush of shame and exhilaration washing over her. She was an idiot. He would never accept a random friend request. An hour later, as she was trying to lose herself in designing a logo for a new artisanal pickle company, a notification popped up. "Ben Carter accepted your friend request." Elara's breath hitched. The game, terrifyingly, was afoot. The first message from Ben came 2 days later, a simple response to a photo of a sunset she'd posted, a stock image from a free-to-use site. Ben Carter. Stunning shot. Where was this taken? Lyra Evans. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs, just a little secret spot up the coast. I'm a bit of a sunset chaser. Ben Carter. A woman after my own heart. I'm a sucker for a good sky. I'm Ben, by the way. And so it began. The double life. By day, Elara was still herself. She'd see Ben taking out his trash and would give a tight, little wave before scurrying inside. She'd run into him at the local grocery store, muttering a barely audible hello while intently studying the nutritional information on a box of cereal. But by night, she was Lyra. Lyra was eloquent. Lyra was funny. She debated him on the best Scorsese film. Lyra argued for The Departed. Elara preferred the quiet melancholy of Taxi Driver. She told him stories about her work, spinning tales of demanding clients and creative triumphs that were just exaggerated versions of her own mundane experiences. She was everything Elara wished she could be, a confident, vibrant, and interesting woman. The dichotomy was dizzying. One Tuesday, she spent 20 minutes chatting with Benaz Lyra about his dream of sailing across the Mediterranean. The conversation was fluid, filled with easy banter and shared enthusiasm. The very next morning, the elevator doors slid open to reveal him, holding a cardboard tray with 2 coffees. "Hey, Elara, right?" he said, his voice as warm as she remembered. She nodded, her throat suddenly dry. "I was just grabbing coffee. My friend bailed. Would you like one? It's a latte, I think. No sense in it going to waste." He was holding out a cup to her.
To Elara.
Her mind, so sharp and quick as Lyra, went completely blank. This was a direct, real-world interaction. There was no backspace key, no time to craft a clever response.
Oh, I
have coffee. At home. I mean, I'm going to make some. But thanks. The words tumbled out, graceless and ungrateful. His smile faltered slightly.
Oh.
Okay. No problem. The elevator dinged, signaling her floor. She all but ran out, the ghost of his offered kindness and her own stunning awkwardness hanging in the air behind her. That night, she confessed to Lyra Evans, "I did something so awkward today. My neighbor offered me a coffee, and I basically acted like he'd offered me a live grenade."
Ben Carter, AOL. Why?
Was he a weirdo? Lyra Evans. No. That's the thing. He seemed really nice.
Just caught me off guard.
I'm not great with spontaneous, real-life interactions. Ben Carter, I get that. The internet makes it easier, doesn't it? You can be whoever you want to be. The irony was so sharp it felt like a physical cut. If he only knew. Weeks bled into a month. The online relationship between Ben and Lyra deepened. They started texting, then talking on the phone. Using a voice modulator app felt like a step too far, but the fear of him recognizing her voice was greater. She pitched her voice slightly lower, adopted a more measured cadence. It was exhausting, this constant performance, but the reward was addictive. Ben was opening up to Lyra. He told her about his pressure cooker job in marketing, his complicated relationship with his father, his dream of quitting it all to start a small, sustainable tourism business. Elara was falling in love with him. Not the idealized version she saw from afar, but the real, vulnerable man who existed behind the handsome facade. And she was terrified because he was falling for a ghost, a digital phantom she had created. The conflict escalated in the real world. Now, when she saw Ben, there was a new layer of tension. It wasn't just her awkwardness anymore. It was the weight of 1,000 shared secrets he knew nothing about. He'd try to make conversation, asking about her day, and she'd freeze. The words, "I spent it talking to you," as my alter ego, screaming in her head. The breaking point, the turning point, came on a rainy Friday evening.
Ben Mesih diyor.
Ben Carter, I know this is maybe out of the blue, but there's this gallery opening downtown tomorrow night. A friend of a friend is showing. I have a +1. Would you like to finally meet? The world tilted. Elara's blood ran cold. This was the inevitable conclusion she had both dreaded and, in her most secret heart, desired. to step out from behind the screen, to become Lyra in the flesh. But she couldn't. It was impossible. The professional makeup, the styled hair, the confident laugh, they were artifacts of a single photograph, a moment in time she couldn't replicate. The real Elara would show up in a simple black dress, her hands shaking, and the entire beautiful, fragile illusion would shatter into a million pieces. She panicked. Lyra Evans, I'd love to, Ben. But I can't. I'm going out of town last minute. A family thing. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. The silence from his end was deafening. After 10 long minutes, his response came.
Ben Carter, okay.
No problem. Maybe another time. The warmth was gone from his text. It was flat formal. She had hurt him. She had rejected him, and he had no idea it was because she was the quiet girl living 50 feet away from him, a girl too terrified to be seen. The following week was agony. Ben's messages to Lyra became infrequent and curt. In the real world, he stopped trying altogether. He'd see her in the hallway and give a brief, polite nod before looking away. The coffee offer was a distant memory. She had successfully pushed away both versions of herself from him. Elara was miserable. The digital fantasy had become a gilded cage, and the real-world silence was its punishment. She missed him. She missed their conversations. The guilt was a physical weight on her chest, crushing her. She spent days in a fog of self-loathing until one evening, she found herself staring at her reflection in the dark screen of her monitor. She saw the timid, fearful Elara. And she saw the ghost of Lyra, the woman who was brave enough to be honest, to be vulnerable. Lyra wasn't a separate person. She was a potential. A part of herself she was too cowardly to unleash upon the world. The realization was a quiet, profound earthquake. She wasn't catfishing Ben. She was hiding from herself. She had to end it. She had to kill Lyra. With a deep, shuddering breath, she opened the chat window with Ben. Lyra Evans. Ben, I need to talk to you. I haven't been honest with you. Ben Carter. What's going on? She began to type. She told him everything. She didn't reveal her true identity yet, but she confessed that the profile was a front, a shield for her own insecurities. That she wasn't the bold, adventurous woman he thought she was. That she was, in fact, painfully shy and had created Lyra as a way to connect with people without the risk of getting hurt. Lyra Evans. The reason I didn't want to meet you isn't because I didn't want to. It's because I was terrified you'd be disappointed. The real me could never live up to Lyra. She sent the message and immediately blocked him on the social media app and his number. It was a brutal, final act. Lyra was dead. The silence that followed was the most profound she had ever experienced. She had severed the connection, and in doing so, she had broken her own heart. For 2 days, Elara was a ghost in her own life. She didn't work. She barely ate. She expected, at any moment, for there to be a knock on her door, for Ben to be standing there, angry and betrayed. But the knock never came. On the 3rd day, she forced herself to leave the apartment. She needed air, needed to feel like a real person again. She went to the local park, sitting on her usual bench, watching the ducks paddle on the pond. The simple normalcy of it was both a comfort and a torment. She didn't hear him approach. Elara. She jumped, turning to find Ben standing there. His expression was unreadable. There was no anger, no disgust. Just a deep, weary sadness. Her heart stopped. This was it.
Ben, I
figured it out, he said quietly, sitting down on the bench beside her, but keeping a careful distance. After that last message from Lyra, and then her disappearing, it took me a while. The pieces were all there. The shared opinions. The way Lyra always seemed to know little things about my day. The sunset photo that was taken from a lookout point just 10 miles from here. He looked at her, his gaze direct and piercing. It was you the whole time, wasn't it? Tears welled in Elara's eyes, spilling over before she could stop them. She nodded, unable to speak.
Why?
The question was simple, but it held a universe of hurt. She wiped her tears away, forcing herself to look at him. Because the real me is terrified of this.
Of talking to you.
Of being seen. Lyra could say all the things I wanted to say. She was brave and funny, and you liked her. I just wanted to know what it felt like for someone like you to like someone like me. Ben was silent for a long time, watching the ducks. You know, he said finally, his voice soft, the things I told Lyra, they were real. The stuff about my job, my dad, I don't just share that with anyone. I shared it with you. I know, she whispered. And I'm so sorry. It was a horrible, selfish thing to do. I don't expect you to forgive me. I was angry at first, he admitted. Really angry. But then I kept thinking about Elara. The one in the elevator. The one who refused my coffee. I thought she was just disinterested. Or that I'd done something wrong. I had no idea she was fighting a war inside her own head. He turned to face her fully now. That last message Lyra sent about being terrified that the real her wouldn't live up to the fantasy, was that also you? Every word, Elara said, her voice thick with emotion. Ben let out a long, slow breath. Elara, the reason I was so drawn to Lyra wasn't because of the perfect profile picture or the cool job. It was because of her vulnerability, her honesty, the way she made me feel like I could be myself. I was falling for the person behind the words. He paused, letting his words hang in the air between them. And now I find out that person was you all along. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers for a moment before he gently covered it with his own. It was a warm, solid, real weight. So, how about we try this again? He said, a small, tentative smile touching his lips. It wasn't the dazzling, perfect smile from the mailroom. It was something softer, more genuine.
I'm Ben.
I live in 3B. I hear you're a fantastic graphic designer with a complicated relationship with sunsets and a surprisingly strong opinion on Scorsese. A sob mixed with a laugh escaped Elara's throat. She looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face, seeing him, truly seeing him, for the first time. The sunlight caught the gold flecks in his green eyes. Hi, Ben, she said, her voice trembling but clear, no longer needing a filter or a persona.
I'm Elara.
And there's something you should know. I actually really love coffee.